Hi, this is Kinnear. Welcome to another Starfield update. This is going to be a short one. We're going to talk about the news from the Bloomberg interview that came out today with Phil Spencer, head of Microsoft Gaming. There are several things that were covered in this interview, all of which are very interesting. However, I'm really interested in just the parts that could impact Starfield. So I'm going to skip over the stuff about the acquisitions, the Chinese market, the mobile stuff that they're planning, and handheld updates. Although all those are interesting and you could go take a look at those. There's a post up on my channel with a link to the article itself on a site that's not paywalled, although you can go to the primary site at Bloomberg and you can get a free account there too. Anyway, there were two things in this article that I wanted to highlight right off the bat, and they're pretty straightforward. The first one is his statement about releasing the first batch of Xbox games for Sony's PlayStation and the Switch as well. He said that he is pleased with the results and Microsoft will do more of that. That's pretty cool in itself. Said they're not going to rule out any game in Microsoft's stable. That got my attention right off the bat. Says he doesn't see any red lines around the portfolio that say thou must not with this particular game or this particular franchise. I think they went on to talk about Halo. So I think there's some titles probably within traditional Xbox areas that some people might be a little more willing to disbelieve are going to move over to the PlayStation. So that's all possible. Some of them clearly are already there, and some of the Bethesda titles are already there too. The second quote that he made was right at the end of this, and I think it gets overlooked because it's, it's the bottom of it and nobody's paying that much attention to it. I'm going to skip the part about, it's nice that he feels good where the industry's going. That's great. Thinks they need to be creative and adaptive of new business models, new devices, and new ways of access. And clearly what he's talking about there is, let's say, a disconnection from purely being console focused. And it's not like Microsoft has been purely console focused for any period of time, or even Xbox. They clearly are putting games on Xbox for PC, and they're certainly addressing the mobile market as well. But he's calling it out here, and the last line is the one that really kind of drives it home, I think. We're not going to grow the market with $1,000 consoles. Now, it's worth noting that we all recognize that none of the consoles are $1,000 right now. Not the Sony PlayStation consoles, and the Xbox consoles aren't there either. Although the most recent PlayStation 5 Pro is inching up in price and getting pretty high. And to some extent, it's starting to bump up against lower end gaming PCs. So I think what he's basically just saying is the focus on consoles and the hardware, although I'm sure they find value in it, is not how they see themselves growing in the future. So both of those are pretty interesting quotes in my opinion. And I wanted to take a look at those. And I think a lot of people immediately looked at that and started thinking about all the games in the Microsoft portfolio across the board. And if you're into Bethesda games, you probably thought about Elder Scrolls 6 right off the bat. And I don't want to make this about Elder Scrolls 6, but I do think there's a very interesting intersection here. And it is the information that came out in the acquisition about the timeline for Elder Scrolls 6, which we had seen. I think I have a chart of this one too, so I'll see if I can bring that up here. So we had seen in this chart that Elder Scrolls 6 was expected in 2026 or later, I think. And this chart came out of the FTC filing when they were going through the process of acquiring Activision Blizzard. They had to put some information together and assure the FTC that their practices weren't anti-competitive or it wasn't going to cause a problem. But the result of that was we got to see some insight into when Elder Scrolls 6 might come out. Now, I don't think at the time Fallout 5 was really landed on a time and a specific rollout schedule. I'm not sure if it was on that chart. I'm not going to go back and look at it. But we know now that Fallout 5 is probably after Elder Scrolls 6 as well. And why this is important as it relates to Starfield, I'll go into next. The most important key element, or let's say the common element between these three games, is that these are the games that are built on Creation Engine 2. And out of the three games that are supposed to run on Creation Engine 2, which was a major upgrade from Creation Engine, are Fallout 5, Starfield, and Elder Scrolls 6. And so the immediate thought that comes to mind for me is that this one is already out. Starfield is already out. It's on Creation Engine 2. It was released on PC and Xbox. And if you've been playing since the beginning on either one of those platforms, you may be aware that this is my perception, but I think this has been the common experience. The PC performance was probably a little better and more stable, depending on the hardware you had, certainly, right? So there's a lot of variability there, but if you had good higher end hardware, you could have a very good running version of Starfield when it first launched. So there were certainly other bugs and problems, but from a performance perspective, if you had the right hardware, it did pretty well. At least it did for me. And I started with I think I started with a 3070 and then I moved up into the 4000 series later, and I was able to play on both. On the Xbox though, there were performance problems for Starfield early on. And several of the patches and updates that came out since then were directly to address the performance issues on Xbox, and it's gotten so much better, right? I do have an Xbox here, an Xbox Series X, and there's a point in time where it just became kind of buttery smooth in some areas, and it's there's still some issues. I think that it's not as quick as my PC is, but some of those are other parts of the PC, the storage and things like that. So the point I'm bringing up though is that the Creation Engine 2, the first game that was launched on it was Starfield. It was on PC and Xbox, and they had some performance issues, and it's taken them some time to solve those. So I can't help but think that within Bethesda and within Xbox at a higher level, they are very aware of the fact that this engine is still new in many ways. It's only on use on one game, and it's only being used in 2 platforms at this point in time. Maybe I don't understand how they deploy it, but since it's not on PlayStation 5 or PlayStation 5 Pro for any games right now, that does feel like there's a little bit of risk associated with that. And if I were going to launch Elder Scrolls 6 built on the Creation Engine 2 as the first title on PlayStation that ran on Creation Engine 2, I might consider that to be a little risky, right? Now, some years are going to pass, and we can assume that Creation Engine 2 will continue to be updated and bugs will be fixed and things like that. And they'll continue to do that work with Starfield anyway on Xbox and PC. But it doesn't feel like there would be any better test than to have an actual game on PlayStation 5 that ran on Creation Engine 2. And the only real choice for that is Starfield. So I think, that kind of brings all these pieces together for me. So if I'm looking at Starfield and I'm looking at Creation Engine 2 and I'm looking at the PlayStation and asking myself, which one is it going to be, or, what's going to happen in what order, I think we're probably going to see Starfield released onto the PlayStation 5 sometime before 2026. Maybe Elder Scrolls doesn't come out in 2026. Maybe it's later. They can shift their timelines. In an ideal world, I think they would release it at the same time they would do a DLC. We just saw Amazon Studios with New World Eternum both launch a DLC and some updated content at the same time they released it for consoles in general. So they didn't have consoles at all, but they packaged it up in such a way that the event was both the console launch and new content at the same time, a pretty major revamp. So it would be not unheard of, even though that wasn't Bethesda, if Bethesda were to launch their next DLC, maybe Starborn, at the same time that they also put Starfield onto the PlayStation 5. That is speculation on my part. And we should all assume that depending on the time between the event that might happen in the future and now, the accuracy of the speculation can vary quite widely, right? So if I were trying to predict something that was going to happen next month, I might have better information and we'd have a better idea of what's going to happen. If it's going to be a year or more down the road, who knows, right? They could decouple those things. The good news is, I think if they stick to what they've been doing over the past 12 months plus, we might see some additional new DLC, some of it paid, some of it free. Who knows, maybe more buggies, more content like the Trackers Alliance, the first part free, and maybe some stuff that's paid also, maybe more like the Escape DLC. And certainly I expect to see things like wearables and that kind of stuff. But we also have at this point in time, keep in mind, not that long ago, it opened up the Creation Store. So we've got just a growing number of mods that are, let's say, Bethesda approved and available for people. So the game continues to grow. We do expect that we're going to get a DLC sometime next year. I'm assuming it's just going to be a 1-year time frame based on some of the earlier interviews and the comments that Todd Howard made about beats and timing and things like that. And in the meantime, we'll still get updates for performance, but hopefully they'll be working on Starfield and anything that touches the Creation Engine 2 side of it as well as they move things forward, making it better and better until they get to the point where they drop it onto the PlayStation at the same time. I think that'll also, as I said in my earlier video about Starfield's overall sales performance in future, I think that also will open up a significant number of sales and potential sales, especially if they start doing their normal discount cycle through the holidays and other times. It'll open up a lot of sales and continue to allow Starfield to grow and more people to enjoy it. So that's going to be it. This is Kinnear. If you like the video, please hit the like button, subscribe, share it, hit the bell notification so that you can get more content. If you want to encourage this, there's lots of ways on the channel description to contribute through Buy Me a Coffee, things like that. Otherwise, hope you enjoyed the video, and I'm out of here. Thanks.